She reached into my pocket and grabbed my car keys right in front of witnesses. Then, when I confronted her, this HOA Karen actually called 911 on me, but what she didn't count on is that I'm the county sheriff, the person she called, in hopes of reporting me to the police, my deputy. So, stay with me until the very end, because what happens next is going to leave you utterly speechless. Trust me, it is quite possibly the most epic example of sweet, sweet karma I've ever seen. Welcome back, Neighbor Wars community, to the #1 destination on YouTube for all the craziest HOA nightmarish stories, property conflicts, and stories of obnoxious neighbors. So, if you're a Karen lover, a Karen hunter, a Karen obliterator, or a Karen destroyer, then you've got to smash that subscribe button today because I post new neighbors' stories 3 times a week. So, let's get today's story, which is brought to us by Sheriff Mike. Mike has been a cop for no less than 15 years, but he'd never been a homeowner until recently. It had been a few months since Mike moved in, and he was finally enjoying some peace. But there was a reason Mike never should have moved in there in the first place, mostly in the form of one HOA president who is about to learn a lesson she will never, ever forget. But before I continue, I've got a question I'd love to answer in a comment below. Have you ever had an HOA nightmare? Of course I do. She held them up. I'm going to hold them until So you're in possession of his property without his consent? Margaret's smug face faltered for an instant. This has nothing to do with heft. IT has to do with heft. HOA enforcement. Do they have any sort of legal basis for giving you the power to seize residents' private property? By the bylaws, we have the law. She was beginning to realize this was not going according to plan. Listen, ma'am, I want you to turn these keys over to their rightful owner this instant. Absolutely not. She'd finally noticed. Rodriguez standing like an elegant stone idol at attention, his hand on his radio, his eyes fixed on me like, "Sir, what are our orders?" Margaret. She looked from his respectful stance to my nonchalant expression. "Sheriff." "Hi, Margaret," I said jovially. "We don't seem to be formally acquainted yet. I'm Sheriff Mike Reeves, County Sheriff's Department. And yes, these men, they're my deputies." 106, the color drained from her face like water poured out of a tub. You're the sheriff?" "Yes, for 15 years now. It's Deputy Johnson. Can you explain to Ms. Margaret there what happens when you take another person's property without permission?" Johnson, bless his heart, had not yet changed expression. "Ma'am, what you've done is theft. In this state, that's Class A misdemeanor. You can be imprisoned up to 1 year or fined up to $2,500. But I'm an HOA. I have authority." "No, ma'am," added Rodriguez smoothly. "HOA authority doesn't stand higher than state law. You don't have the power to seize private property, no matter how high your authority. I want you to arrest him." Margaret shouted, pointing at me. "He threatened me." "Ma'am, did he threaten you directly?" Johnson asked patiently. He said I was committing theft." "What you did," drawled Rodriguez. "Not exactly an action. Threat. More like an action statement of fact." "Did he threaten you physically?" "He could have." She was getting frantic now. "He was intimidating." I laughed high, couldn't help it. "Margaret, I've been standing in my own driveway with my arms crossed this entire time. I haven't taken a single step toward you." "Sheriff Reeves," Johnson asked formally, "do you wish to press charges for theft?" Oh man, the temptation. I looked at Margaret, really looked at her. She was shaking now, still holding my keys, but her entire triumphant demeanor had utterly fallen apart. The neighbors were all watching. Tom had his phone out recording. This was the moment. "You know what, Deputy Johnson? I don't think criminal charges are necessary." Yet Margaret exhaled a breath. However, I continued, "I want a formal report of this incident. Date, time, witnesses, 911 call, everything. And Margaret, you're going to return my keys right now. Apologize in front of all these onlookers. And then we have a very important conversation regarding your behavior as HOA president." "I don't have to apologize for, actually, you do," Rodriguez inserted. "Because the alternative is the sheriff does press charges, you get arrested, you get booked in prison, you get a mugshot, you get a prison record. You absolutely sure as heck lose your position on the HOA. Your choice." Not a breath was taken. Slowly, as if it pained her physically to do so, Margaret extended my keys. I did not take them right away. The apology first. The muscles of her jaw ached in a fiery contraction of her entire face as she gritted. Her teeth, I apologize for taking your keys. And for calling the police unnecessarily. And for 3 months of being pestered through spurious HOA complaints. I pointed out, that's not fine. And for the complaints. I took my keys. Thank you. And here's what's going to happen next. Deputies, please finalize your report. Margaret, you and I and the rest of the HOA board are going to have a meeting tomorrow, 2 p.m., at my house. I don't think it wasn't a request, I said, my tone toggling into its duty of communication mode. You have 2 choices. Well, we've got this meeting and we define these guidelines on how we're going to conduct the HOA from now on. Or I'll start looking into every single thing you've done since becoming our president 3 years ago, and I guarantee there'll be several counts of harassment, abuse of authority, and perhaps fraud involved. And then I'll press charges. What will it be? She looked like she'd explode. Margaret took a moment to nod and turned to go, then turned. Back to speak again. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. We'll be there. It made me grin to see him so happy to accommodate my demands. Well done, deputies. Thank you for your professionalism. I'll see you back at the station. After they left with Margaret's formal complaint for their report, she slunk away into her house without uttering another word. Tom came over with his grin still plastered across his healthy features. Dude, this was the best thing I've ever witnessed, and I've been to some weird Mardi Gras bashes down in New Orleans. This I said, smiling sweetly past my teeth. This was just the beginning. The following day, Margaret appeared with her sister Linda and her friend Carol, the other 2 members of the HOA board. They all sported the same appearance I'd noted previously, like they were going to a funeral with hats and everything. My lawyer made his presence known as he'd arrived promptly this morning and was more than eager to help me out with Margaret's antics. It seems he'd heard dreadful stories about Margaret from other lawyers he'd spoken to.
Let's get down to business.
Today, then, I said to everyone at the meeting called due to Margaret's antics yesterday, my previous phone call to my lawyer today to meet with him and prepare for today's proceedings. The very first matter we will attend to today will involve your resignation from your presidency in the HOA. You'll never, I briefly brought his document across the table and took his place against Margaret's glare aimed my way. In fact, due to your antics of yesterday and Margaret's reading from the bylaws of our HOA organization here and contacting 12 of our own homeowners, to enable this timely send-off to your presidency in this HOA organization, we've garnered sufficient representation of votes to secure this vote of no confidence by the sheriff's office requiring a 2/3 majority vote. It seems Margaret turned the same nasty shade of ash gray as before. If you can't tell the difference, then you shouldn't be on the board. We spent 2 hours forming a new set of rules. A minimum 48-hour notice for infractions requires photographic evidence, an appeals committee of 3 people rotating on a yearly basis, and a definite cap on fines. Tom was voted president. He had lived in the neighborhood for 8 years and actually cared about the community, not control. Margaret left without saying goodbye to anyone in the neighborhood. She left 3 months later, the neighborhood totally transformed. After that one day, Tom totally transformed the whole HOA model not look for infractions anymore. But we began a community event organization network. Block parties, decoration contests, and a neighborhood watch program actually implemented, meaning actual community building made a comeback. Several community members told me about how Margaret had been harassing them for years, and they were afraid to do anything about it. They were penalized over $3,000 for a myriad of infractions. These were subjectively assigned and had nothing at all to do with actual rules. I began working on a small claim suit on behalf of one elderly couple to refund them the money they had paid. They accepted a settlement, but the kicker? Neighborhood property values actually raised following this major neighborhood shift. Who knew a community wanting a community and feeling like one actually raised property values? Regarding Margaret, I heard this from a grapevine source directly owing credit to a reliable grapevine grape couple, Kirill. She applied for another HOA position in a completely other neighborhood. But this one, following a complete background investigation and search for references, heard about her other position and subsequent neighborhood misdeeds. No one else wanted her. Here's the moral I learned from this entire experience. Bullies are fed and sustained by those who remain silent and unresponsive. I mean this. Had I chosen to remain silent and unresponsive, she would have remained a terrorizing force in the lives of those I dwell with. 2. Things are better if given a chance applies well here. HOAs are actually good if run by those respecting and advocating for community interests. Nightmares await if run by those craving control. No actual surprises here. 3. Know your rights and follow them religiously. Margaret got away with this kind of harassing intimidation because most folks were unaware she had no actual governing authority in this topic. 4. Never, ever take a sheriff's car keys. That's the real victory. So that's my tale of HOA Karen versus the sheriff. Day Margaret discovered that titles does not equal power. The character does. If you're struggling with your own HOA nightmare, now, here's what I recommend. Document everything. Understand your governing documents. Network your community. Don't be intimidated into submission to bullying HOAs, including ones led by Karens. And hey, if you like that tale of karma-biting an entitled HOA president into submission, then you'll love what Neighbor Wars HQ has in store. We dish up the craziest disputes between neighbors, HOA horror stories, disputes over your personal property, titled Karen's Gone Wild, and so much more. We post every Tuesday and Thursday. Subscribe now and then click that notification bell icon so I can give you all the updates on all the crazy neighbor disputes. I have loads of tales on fence disputes gone wild, parking disputes, noise complaints that escalated into full-blown lawsuits, and so much more. Leave your own tale below. Would you have pressed assault in my case? Would you have taken action against your own HOA, Karen? We might just include your tale in one of my upcoming videos. Just give it to us straight. No joke intended. If you liked this tale of entitled karma, which I do, give it a like. Then give it to your neighbor who just loves fighting off HOA. Karens who just love acting all high and mighty. Thanks for watching Neighbor Wars HQ. Remember, good neighbors make for great neighbors. No fences or mouse houses needed. Good fences make good neighbors, but that just means they don't need fences. See what I mean? Until next time, stay safe. Don't ever let any HOA Karens give you grief. Not on OUR watch.